Welcome to As the Key Turns. My name is David Lehman, and I served 23 years at the United States Penitentiary at Marion, Illinois as a prison guard. We were the people that replaced Alcatraz. Now, before you forget it, hit the like button, will you? And don't forget to subscribe, because you're going to want to see more of these videos, and I've already got a plethora of them that you can go through right now if you want to. I have a suggestion, and here it is from at STST77, and he writes and says, in part, he wrote a pretty nice long thing. I wonder what percentage of COs come out of such a job with an intact family and mentally healthy. I'm guessing a lot finish their career either with some mental strain or broken family or both. You should do a video on how this job impacts CO officers in their private lives. Yes, that's probably one of the things that is the least talked about and the most affecting. Okay, if you're going to lose your job with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, you probably killed yourself. That's why you're no longer working there. To get fired is so difficult that it probably isn't going to happen. I mean, unless you're just way over the top, you know, like drunk every day and don't show up, that kind of thing. Yes, the amount of alcoholics, people that have slipped into drug abuse, suicide, is a lot more than in any other position that I've ever been in. Now, in the military, during the initial training, you know, when you're first getting used to the military, suicide is prevalent in the military. People try to kill themselves because they just can't handle the drastic change from the civilian world to the military world. And so it's called basic training. You're learning the basics of the military, how to act, what's expected of you, things like that. The Bureau of Prisons, on the other hand, it's a long, grinding process. I mean, I did 23 years at a Supermax prison. Well, it started out as a Supermax prison, and then somewhere about the middle of my career, it switched to a medium security. But in all aspects, suicide was prevalent. We had several. People that just couldn't cope with their life as it was. I'm not going to blame it specifically on the Bureau, but you do get a lot of stress at work. And no, it's not the inmates. The inmates really cause me very little stress. It's the people that run the joint that cause me such stress. I mean, they're doing these things that you realize are for their own personal benefits, or since they travel so much, the people that run the Bureau might be in one prison this year, and then 2 years later he's in another prison. So if he screws up one royally, he just gets to move on. So it really doesn't matter. What matters is, like corporate America, if you do good this quarter, then you're the hero, right? It doesn't matter that, like with Sears or something, you know, like Sears has gone down the drain because they hired all these college boys that know about, oh, I got to make good this quarter and screw the company in the long run. It just doesn't matter. So you get people that do things like they reduce the amount of people in a particular segment of the prison to the point where it can't really be done anymore if anyone goes on leave, and then they walk away and say, ha ha ha, everything worked out great, and then when it all goes to shit, then they say, oh, well, it worked good when I was there, but it went to shit later, you know, that kind of thing. But no, they had set up the process for it to go down the drain. You know, it's like, yes, you can get more out of an engine if you run it full speed all the time, and then don't do any maintenance, just keep the motor running, and maybe that you can get away with that for a while. But in the long run, the motor's going to break up because you didn't do the required maintenance. You didn't change the oil, you didn't do filter exchanges, you didn't check the fluid levels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's the same way with the Bureau of Prisons and the people that work there. I mean, yes, you can run your staff into the dirt and then walk away, and then wonder how come, later on, everybody's got a bad attitude or something. Well, they've been run into the dirt, and they don't give a damn anymore. Well, I've run into people that have felt that way about the inmates. I mean, they just hate the inmates. And you can't do that. You can't have them kind of emotions running through you all the time. It wears you down. It breaks you up. You're in a bad position that way. I mean, it's killing you, not them. So to be angry at them, you're really just hurting yourself is what you're doing. So don't harm yourself thinking that you're harming the other guy, because you're not. You're harming you. A guy that had to retire because his heart was, he had heart problems because he was angry all the time, and it damaged his heart. Had a guy who did everything that he could. He was doing his best job, but there's always a complaint. The guy doesn't work in food service, right? There's always people bitching about food service. The coffee's too hot, the coffee's too cold. There's not enough coffee. There's too much coffee, you're wasting it. There's not enough of this kind of food or that kind of food, or we don't like your food, and on and on and on. And there's always all these complaints. Well, the guy goes home, he's on edge. He did, what do they call that, retail therapy, where you go and buy something, makes you feel better for a little while. Well, him and his wife had decided that they weren't going to do that anymore. They weren't going to have any more retail therapy, and they made this agreement amongst themselves, and he agreed to it. And then one day on the way home, he bought a $500 thing, and his wife and him have an argument over it, and he goes out in the woods and puts the old gun to his head, puts a bullet about 3/4 of the way through his head, doesn't damage his brain, blows his eyes to the point where they almost pop out of his head, puts the gun in his pocket and falls over and bleeds to death in the woods. I mean, pretty damned horrible way to go, okay? The job had a significant impact on that. It was the stress of all the people complaining. It's kind of like this YouTube stuff. Many people make these stupid comments. I hate you because you're a CO and you're all pigs and we hope you die. I mean, you get a lot of comments like that. And a long time ago, I was kind of taking them like personal, but now I just kind of said, well, it's like the prison system. You got a bunch of thugs, they act like stupid people, and you just got to brush them off. It's like, my wife says, go away, fly, because flies come and land on you, so you make them go away. That's kind of what those people are, and that's kind of the way it was at work too. I mean, you have these guys that their sole purpose is to get promoted. I mean, I knew the guy that made captain eventually, and he said that when he showed up, or he went away and he became a lieutenant, then he came back as a lieutenant, and then he wanted to be a captain, and on and on. He wanted to be warden or whatever. And he told me, he said, I'm going to do anything they say. When they say jump, I'm just going to leap in the air, and then on the way up, ask them how high they want me to jump. I'm just going to kiss all the ass that I need to kiss to get as far in advance as I can. Well, okay. He was divorced, I don't know, like 3 times, 4 times. He says that his retirement now is a pittance. And I thought about that for a long time, and I said to my friend, I said, why would that guy think that his retirement is a pittance? And he said, because the guy has been married all those times, he's got to give them spousal support, child support, this support, that support. He said, and what's left is a pittance. You get a lot more money than he does. I'm like, oh yeah, because I've been married the whole time. Now, I was married while I was in the military. And then my wife quite literally has been married to me for every job that I ever had. So, like, she was with me when I was a cop. She was with me when I was, the deputy sheriff thing. She was with me with the Coast Guard, the Army, the bag boy at the grocery store. Yeah, that and being a guard, like a security guard, was the only civilian jobs that I ever had. Everything else was in the military or government service. So she was with me for all of those things, you know, and she's a quite resilient gal because she's not American, first of all. I purposely, well, I don't want to say purposely. I didn't marry an American because I don't get along with American women. I mean, it's all about me, and American attitudes are, on the surface, they're very much, you know, I love you, I love everything. My wife said that about me. You know, she said, I told her I love her, and she said, don't say that. Show me. Don't say it. Show me. She said, because you love everything. You love your car, you love the day, you love your cat. You just love everything. I love this, I love that. She said, don't put me in that category. I should be something else. I want you to show me you love me. You know, don't tell me you love me. So that was kind of the gal that I found that's able to put up with all this crap. And yes, at one point I had to go to therapy. And it came about because a young lady at work, in casual conversation, mentioned that I had PTSD. And I said, I do not have PTSD, period, end of sentence. And she said, oh yeah, you do. And so I'm the kind of competitive individual that I have to prove that you are wrong. So I looked up on, you know, PTSD or us or some damn thing, and it said there's these 12 things that are indicative of having PTSD. And I did 11 of the 12, and it said if you have 3 or more, you probably have PTSD. So I'm like, ooh, damn, that's a bad sign. And so I went back and had to, you know, I'm like, hey man, I really think that you're right, I have PTSD. And she was like, duh. And so at some point, I decided to receive therapy. I went to some guy, man, and you know, if you're gonna go to therapy for PTSD or something, you really have to get along with your therapist. So first I went with this guy, right? And he told me all these stories about, yeah, he helped a lot of people, and you know, they were veterans and from the Vietnam War, and you know, the things like that. And he had this thing about touching me. There are people, you know them, they gotta, when they're making a comment, they gotta reach over there and touch you. So this guy's always wanting to touch me. And it's very annoying for me. I just can't stand it. And maybe that's part of his, like, you know, therapy or something. But for me, it just don't work. Even now, don't touch me. I tell all my employees that on my first day on the job, hey, if you walk up behind me, don't put your hand on me. Don't do that. Talk to me. Say something, and I'll turn around and look at you. You know, don't, you know, unless I'm on fire or something, don't touch me. So, and then he had this little dog. I think he had a therapy dog for him. And he's always petting his dog when we're having his conversations or whatever. And he has these little bitty, like, you know, chihuahuas. And their eyes bug out, you know, at you and stuff. And they go at you and things. And I just can't stand that particular type of dog. And he's like, did you like to pet my dog? And I'm like, no, I want to crack his neck and see if I can squeeze his head till his eyes pop out. You know, and the guy says, oh, you have a lot of anger. Duh. Okay, you know, and then we ran over things like, and then he had some really big disagreements with me, like, you work at this prison, right? Yes. And then you have these other things that you're doing, like you're buying houses and fixing them up and selling them, and you're renting them out, and you're doing all this other stuff, and you earn even more money. Like, why do you do that? I said, it makes me feel more secure. He said, so you feel unsecure if you don't have a lot of money? And I said, right. And he said, if you had $1 million, would that be enough money? And I said, no. And he said, well, if you had $2 million, would that be enough money? I said, no. And he goes, well, how much is enough? And I said, more. What's that mean? It means more. Whatever I got, more. If I had $1 billion, I'd want more. Because he said, so you're never going to be 100% secure. I said, no, because I don't have everything. And, you know, it's just, he just couldn't take it. So eventually I ended up changing to Julie. And Julie is a female, so she doesn't touch on me. And, you know, we just had conversations, you know. A lot of the thing that was bothering me was things like from when I was a police officer, you know, I mean, people died and I was unable to save them, and that really bothered me. It still does. I mean, it bothered me that, you know, because I'm Superman, right? And Superman never let Lois Lane get hurt. Well, you know, I go to traffic accidents and people are dying, and I'm trying my best to keep them alive until the professionals in that field can show up and they can do their miracle and save them. And sometimes they don't last that long. Or I was unable to talk the guy out of, you know, shooting himself, that kind of thing. And it bothered me that I was unable to save them people. And so there was some of that. And then, of course, you know, the extreme violence of prison, especially USP Marion, where I witnessed at least a fight a week. And not witnessed, was involved, physically involved in a fight a week or so. And to the point where we would talk about, hey man, there hasn't been a fight in a while, what's going on? You know, so it was extremely violent. And that kind of violence takes a toll on you mentally. And then you've got to be able to let it go. Remember the song, Let It Go, Let It Go? Well, you have to be able to let it go. You can't bring it home. The problem is there's some things that just get so ingrained into you, like the mistrust. Like when you work at a penitentiary, everybody that's your supervisor and above, I don't trust them. I don't trust the government because they lie. They don't just misstate things, misspeak. They don't say, well, you know, it was true at that time, but it's not true. No, they flat out will lie to you and tell you that you're going to receive some sort of benefit that they have no intention of ever doing, ever. Or that some great thing is going to happen. All you have to do is sacrifice, you know, that kind of thing. And it's not true. They're lying to you. And then, of course, your fellow staff, they want to be promoted, or there's many of them want to be promoted. So if they can learn anything that's adversarial, anything that they can use against you, they will. So and people do some of the dumbest things, like those ladies come to work and, oh, my husband and I are trying to have a baby. Oh, for God's sakes, don't tell people that. You know, oh yeah, there's something wrong with you because you are unable to conceive, you know, something like that. It's just silly. Or the gal that came to work and said that she had a breast implant. Oh my God, why would you tell people you had a breast implant? You know, just don't say some stuff. They use it against you. And then, of course, all that builds up anger and frustration, and then you go home and there's your family and you're on edge, and your kid drops something on the floor like the grape juice or whatever, and you way overreact, you know, that kind of thing. My overreaction was always sad. You know, I'd be really sad that my daughter dropped the grape juice on the carpet, and you know, and it was damaged, and oh, it's so sad that the carpet is now damaged. And then she would be like feeling guilty. Oh, I didn't mean to damage it. Yeah, I know, but it's damaged. And oh, it's so awful that this terrible thing happened. And I would blow it all out of proportion. And, it was like, don't instill guilt in your children for doing child things, you know. So I had to be very cautious about that. Or, the wife would not do something, and I'd be like, oh, you wouldn't do it for me because, you don't care, and all that stuff. Or, the dinner the dinner's late, and oh, my wife don't care about me, and, oh, woe is me kind of thing, And they get tired of that crap too. Because she is doing daycare with little kids, and man, they're stressful. Them little kids, they're like suicidal. They try to ram their head into, I seen a kid one time put his hands behind his back like he's standing at ease, and then launch himself forward and hit the hinge on the door right here, and then he flopped over and just stared straight up, and I thought, that kid just died. Oh my God, the kid's dead. We are in so much trouble. How am I going to explain this? And no, he shook it off. He didn't even cry. He was stunned. And to this day, I am told that that kid still has a little bit of that scar right there on his forehead. And it was just like, oh my God, when his parents came to pick him up, it was like, you know, we got to explain this thing. And it sounds like one of the bullshit things, you know, like, he fell down and hurt himself. No, that ain't what happened. You were like holding him by one leg and smashing his face into the wall or something. You know, you're an abuser. You no good a child abuser. And you know, sometimes children do have accidents. It's true. And that was one of them cases. And the lady was like, yeah, I know he's clumsy. He does things like that at home all the time. You just have to be extra cautious. So after that, I went and got the foam that you insulate hot water pipes with. It's a foam, and it's in a tube looking thing, and I cut those tubes and I put those little things like all over stuff, like the corners of my tables and the edges of some tables that were in the living room, because I'm like, man, this kid's gonna kill himself. I need to put some kind of cushion there so he won't crack his skull open and die. And you know, he still found places to like ram himself into or trip over or something. And so my wife is working all the time, I'm working all the time, and then, you know, I do things on the side. So yes, those things had effects on our family life. I'll tell you probably the worst thing that we ever did, and that's hang wallpaper. Like you see this wallpaper here that's up here. Don't hang wallpaper with anyone that you aren't willing to murder. I mean, you know, you hold your end, I am, it's not matching, I know it, you're stupid, no, I'm stupid, you're stupid. It just gets out of hand. So, you know, you just avoid things like that with your spouse. Get your friend and you to do it. You know, don't do those kind of jobs with your spouse. Some other things too that really get into the family life is my paranoia. You know, I see the Santa Claus, you know, at the mall, and the first thing I think of is Chester Claus. The only reason he wants children to sit on his lap because he's a child molester. My young daughter would refuse to sit on Santa Claus's lap at the company company Christmas party because of me. Don't do that shit there. You never know, there are child molesters everywhere, you know. So she was like, child molesters are everywhere. You got to be careful, you know, that kind of thing. So my daughter grew up that way. My son grew up that way. Very cautious about anybody else and would question your motivation if you were nice to them. Like they would go to the school and then somebody would hand out suckers to everybody at school. My kids are like, why would you do that? What's in it for you? You know, that kind of thing. So yes, that affected the family life. And man, divorce is rampant. Correctional officers go home and want to be correctional officers. I mean, I'm in charge. I'm in charge of everything. You do what I say, you know, kind of thing. And then when I go home and my wife and children are there and there's none of this negotiation crap, do as I told you to do and do it now. You know, and it's like, no, you can't go home and act that way. So what I did, I had a kind of a ritual. And my family even noticed it. When I was getting dressed to go to work, I put on the persona of prison guard. When I came home and took off those clothes and showered, I washed away the stress and the prison guard. Don't start shit with me until that process has gone through. Then you want to discuss something stressful, we can discuss it. But don't do it as soon as I walk in the door. Not going to happen. You're going to be dissatisfied. And it took a while for them to learn that. My children also had to learn, don't wake Daddy up by, you know, poking on his head, because he might punch you in the head. They always went around and grabbed my feet because I wake up swinging. You know, that's another thing where I said, man, I probably ought to see therapy over this, because this isn't normal. And you have to be able to recognize in yourself things that aren't normal. And, you know, my family just learned to deal with that stuff. That's just the way he is. It's that job. You know, I mean, even here in Guyana, nephew questions me and I blow up. You know, it's like, you know, the idiot has got a bonfire going with a whole bunch of plastic in it. The smoke is drifting over us, and I'm like, look, you dumbass, you're poisoning us. Knock it off. Oh, that's somebody else's problem. It's like, no, it's going to be your problem here in about 5 seconds. And then everybody panics. Oh my God, he's going to assault somebody, and you know, it's whatever. So I have to keep Mr. Prison Guard locked up. And with some people, I was able to pretty much do it. But with some people, it just wasn't possible. And my grandmother used to have this thing where she'd say, God doesn't give you anything that you can't handle. How about the guy that bought the $500 thing, it broke the dam, and he went out in the woods and shot himself dead? I would say that he had something that he couldn't handle. So don't tell me that God doesn't give you something that you can't handle, because I've observed it myself. It's done. It happens. Other people, they hate the job so bad that they're trying to get out of it. So what they do is they see people like me, where I have this stuff that's going on the side. So this guy, he decides, hey man, what I'm going to do is, since my wife and children now hate me, I'm going to use all that free time that I used to have interacting with my family, and I'm going to own a business. So since I'm a drunk and I hang out at bars all the time, well, wouldn't it just be cool if I owned my own bar? Yeah, that's a great idea. A drunk owning a bar. What could possibly go wrong? So he's taken advantage of, because he doesn't do what I do, and I float an idea before I'm going to do it to as many people as I can, and then I get a lot of perspective on it, and then I do the thing. So he just decides he's going to purchase some bar. Well, in Marion, Illinois, the way it works is you purchase the bar, all the physical assets, the business, everything, but the license to operate that bar, to sell alcohol at retail, is a thing that's transferred from the person. So in other words, I can own a bar, but I own the license. But I can sell you the bar, but I can't sell you the license. It's returned to the city, goes to the bottom of the stack, and then the next guy that was in line gets the one off the top of the stack, because now there's this license has been returned. Well, they don't explain that to this guy. So what he ends up with a bar, fully functional bar, all ready to roll. But he can't sell a drop of liquor, and he borrowed money to purchase his bar. So now he has this payment that he's got to make every month. He can't make all these payments. There's not enough money to go around. He was counting on the bar to earn some money, and it's going to take up to 2 years to get this license. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do a sensible thing. Instead of like talking to me that says, hey man, you own a business, what would you do in a situation like this? Well, I would sue them people because they didn't tell you everything that you needed to know before you purchase this real estate. I'd sue their ass for that. I'd try to make them take the damn bar back and give me all my money back. And maybe even something in addition to that. Or I might declare bankruptcy and just wipe out all the debts. And the bar gets returned. Yeah, it's going to hurt, and it's going to be kind of embarrassing and everything, but man, it's not doom. I'm going to get to keep my house, my car, those kind of things, you know, my bank accounts, that sort of stuff. No, what does Mr. Rocket Scientist do? Well, why don't we just burn down the bar and collect the insurance money? You know, that's a really great idea. You don't think the cops have ever thought of that before? And you don't think they have a state fire marshal that's an expert in detecting that kind of thing? You think that you're smarter than the guy that does it every day? Well, it looked like they were zooming in on him. He was going to get caught. Probably go to the penitentiary in the state of Illinois for, arson and insurance fraud. It was looking pretty bad. So, just like the inmates teach us, you hang yourself with the electrical cord. It's that real thin cord that hurts a lot when it digs into your throat, and then you asphyxiate. Yeah, that's what he did. Do I put that off onto the job? Well, in a roundabout way, not directly, the fault of the job, but indirectly the fault of the job. I mean, he just hated to work so much because, unlike when I was a cop, right? 50% of the time I was a hero and everybody loved me and thank God you were here. And the other 50% of the time I was a bastard and I'm going to go to hell and just take that badge off and I'd whoop your ass. So at least 50% of the time I got praised, or man, the thing that I love the best was that little kid that looks at you and goes, wow, a policeman, that kind of thing. That's pretty cool. So I used to take my kids, one time we went to the courthouse and there was like a bunch of deputies hanging around. And I said, I'll be with you. And I said, hey, look at them guys. Those are real deputy sheriffs. And my daughter looks at them and goes, wow. Boy, they were standing 10 feet tall when I was over. That's my wife, by the way. Yes. Did you want to say anything about the... I will. And I guess that's the end of it. So, thank you for watching. Hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. Promise it will not kill you. Bye-bye.